The following program is video supplemental instruction. VSI is brought to you by the Teaching Center, UF's Learning Support Center, www.teachingcenter.ufl.edu.
So, now let's work through the last part, part D. And in part D, we're supposed to find f of a plus h minus f of a all over h. And just as we did before, we're going to subtract f of a from f of a plus h, where f of a plus h, substituting a plus h for everywhere we see x in the given function, we have a plus h minus 1 over a plus h plus 1, and f of a is going to be a minus 1 over a plus 1. So that f of a plus h, we have a plus h minus 1 over a plus h plus 1 minus f of a, which is a minus 1 over a plus 1. Okay? And that's all going to be over h. Now, in order to simplify this, we're going to need to get a common denominator on this part on the numerator. So we're going to multiply this part by that, and this denominator to there. And so basically we'll have this, which is a plus 1, multiplied by this numerator, which is a plus h minus 1. And we're going to subtract a minus 1, multiplied by this denominator, which is a plus h plus 1. And the common denominator between these two is just a plus 1 over a plus h plus 1. And that is all over h. Okay? And so if we call this the red term and this the blue term, we can simplify the red term by expanding out first. So we'll multiply this quantity, a plus 1, times this quantity. And so we'll get a plus ah a plus minus a plus a plus h minus 1. Okay, so that's going to be the red term. The blue term will have, well, we can simplify this red term by saying this is actually an a squared. We'll have an a squared plus ah minus a, and a plus a cancel out, so we're just left, that cancels out, so we're left with plus h minus 1. Okay? Do the same thing for the blue term. We'll multiply these two quantities, so we'll get a squared plus ah and plus a minus h minus 1. And if we simplify the blue, we get a squared plus ah minus h minus 1. Okay? All right. Now, we can simply subtract the blue from the red, so that we'll have a squared plus ah plus h minus 1, and subtract the blue, which is a squared plus ah minus h minus 1. And that's going to be over the common denominator, which is a plus 1 over a plus h plus 1. And that's all over h. Okay? All right. And we can simplify the numerator by distributing the negative sign through the second quantity. So we're left with a squared plus h minus 1 minus a squared minus ah plus h plus 1. And that's going to be divided by a plus h over a plus h plus 1 all over h. Okay? And we can simplify the numerator now. We have a positive a squared, negative a squared, those cancel. Positive ah, negative ah, those cancel. And h, positive h, so we're left with a 2h. Positive 1, negative 1, so these cancel. And then that's going to be over a plus 1, a plus h plus 1, all over h. All right? And we can bring this into this denominator. So 2h over h, a plus 1, a plus h plus 1. And all we simply did was, since this fraction here was divided by h, this h will just go to the denominator. And because we're just going to multiply by the reciprocal. So this is actually the simplified solution.
The Teaching Center, UF's Learning Support Center, www.teachingcenter.ufl.edu.